Thanks, Chrissy. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. What a terrific copper project that looked like. Moving right into it, yes, back to West Australia, closer to our current location. Allup Silica, the answer to Chrissy's question straight up was basically we're very affordably priced. Market capitalisation sitting at about $4.5 million at the moment. And cash in the bank's just under 3.8 million as I stand here today. So I think many of you can do the math on that in terms of enterprise value, etc. We're a very clean and tidy capital structure. We listed the company almost exactly 12 months ago. It was a bit of a baptism in fire, to be honest. We listed, I think, about 2 or 3 days prior to Russia deciding it had some intentions that it went public with on the Ukraine. So anyway, here we are today, and we're still focused and very much excited by the opportunity to develop not one, but maybe 2 or 3 projects in West Australia. We've got a good management team, all Perth-based, all with considerable experience between us. So why Allup and why silica? I first started looking at silica about 5 years ago. A colleague brought in a silica project with a view to backdoor listing it back then. And part of their pitch was silica is looming shortage of supply. And I said, you're kidding, we're talking sand, silica sand, I mean, it's everywhere. But anyway, they pointed out some features such as environmental restrictions on silica supply. High purity silica is actually, if you like, rarefied atmosphere in terms of the silica business. So we are actually looking for special material, but not just special material, we're also looking for special locations because it is a bulk commodity. So we do need access, or we do benefit strongly from proximal access to infrastructure such as roads, towns, and of course ports to meet any export market. Part of that also is a focus and a desire for high purity silica, and I'll talk a little bit about that shortly. So as I've already touched on, rising demand and reducing supply. In fact, depending on who you listen to and where you read, silica is one of the stronger growth commodities. It's part of our everyday life, whether it's sitting in your hand or your pocket. This thing is full of silica, so is your computer, so is the glass that you might be drinking water from, so are the window panes as you look through in any building or construction. Literally, the lower quality silica tends to end up in cement and mortar for building and construction. So again, depending on where you read, it's about the second largest traded commodity in the world, according to some. But the more recent and more interesting area of growth, where there is clearly a growth spurt, comes from renewables, and in particular photovoltaic cells, because those solar panels have a layer of glass on the panel, and of course the higher the purity of that glass, the more sun gets into the panel, the more energy comes out. So it's just purely a cost benefit of purity. And so there is a real desire for less than 100 parts per million iron. When you go looking around in West Australia and other parts of the world, it's pretty rarefied stuff. It's not everywhere, contrary to what you might think. First question is, why don't you go to the Middle East or the Sahara? Well, that silica is pretty much, generally speaking, full of iron, which in the form that it exists is difficult to remove, expensive to remove the iron, and therefore it's not very attractive from a commercial or economic point of view. So we really did start our search about 4 years ago for silica sands projects that we thought met let's call it the first pass criteria, where we could start work. So the global rate of sand usage really has grown dramatically, and of course when you think about building and construction in, let's say, China, or more recently perhaps the Middle East and some of the mega projects coming up there, massive surges in silica requirement moving forwards, and a proportion of that silica demand will be for the high purity material, and of course going back to photovoltaics and renewables, it's essential for that. I think there is a strong argument that silica sand is mispriced. It's been mispriced historically because most silica sand mining's occurred off of coastlines, in what we would now call environmentally sensitive areas around the world. And so ESG really is having a dramatic impact to the effect of reducing silica supply. And I was just talking to someone yesterday in the booth, and they mentioned that Indonesia, of course, with its desire to upgrade raw commodities to high value add commodities, is increasingly tightening up on silica sand supply into the Southeast Asian market, at least anecdotally. So Allup's approach, when going back 3-4 years ago, as COVID was just erupting, we were sitting around the table wondering what we all do in Perth, especially with lockdowns and so on. We thought, well, let's really roll up the sleeves and have a look and see what we can find. So what we came up with fairly quickly was a project in the southwest corner of West Australia, which sits primarily between Bunbury Port and Albany Port. Following on from that, we also found some silica, to my surprise, up close to Wyndham, actually, up at the very top end of West Australia, so great location from a customer perspective. And then Esperance, further around down the bottom there, of course, Esperance Port. We've got a very large sand mass there that's only about 15 or 16 kilometres away from port. So each project has its own unique characteristics. People ask me which one's going first. The honest answer is we don't know yet, but we do have essentially 3 horses currently in the race at the Melbourne Cup. So let's just have a closer look at Sparkler. This is the first one in the southwest dimension that we started to focus on, and we did some drilling last year and came out with a maiden inferred resource of 70 million tonnes. We've been doing resampling and further work on that, including some bulk sampling, trying different things with regards to gravity separation and magnetic separation, primarily to pull the iron out of the silica. We've had some really encouraging results where, without too much effort, we can get that silica number down below 100 parts per million iron, which is one of our focuses. And of course, silica purity itself, again, is very handy, up in the high 99% range. So when we're looking at transport and logistics for this, we're really not carting much of West Australia around with us. It's mostly valuable, saleable product. The picture down the bottom in the middle there, you can just see some funny white material in the middle shot there on the photo. That's literally just looking through the microscope at the silica sand. And you can see that's the cleaned up product where we've pulled the iron out with magnets. And you can see the silica itself is very white, very translucent, very clean. The photo on the left is actually the farmland that we're looking at. It's fairly low value from an agricultural point of view. So again, from an environmental point of view, it's been farmland for the best part of over 100 years. So we're not really talking about causing environmental degradation from an environmental pristine perspective. And the right-hand side's just literally a photo shot of a handful of that sand that we're focused on. So that's situated between Bunbury and Albany Port. There is some capacity at those ports, depending on who you talk to and when. But so far, our initial discussions with the ports have been encouraging. So in terms of Sparkler, just a close-up, looking closer at that area, that's an aerial shot that you can see the farmland there that's been disturbed. You can see the grid patterns of the cropping and the farming activity. And those grades indicated there 95, 97, 98% and so on. That's raw silica grade, so that's literally what you drill with a hand auger or drill with a drill rig or grab with a hand sample. And as I said earlier, we put that under the microscope fairly quickly to have a look and see if we think it's easily separable from the iron. In the case of the Sparkler, we found that to be the case. And so here we are. And this is really now the subject of us in the advanced stages of preparing a mining lease application. We've got 3 farmers in the area, and we've been working closely with the farmers and, of course, the native heritage groups. So Sparkler, great location. Sparkler B and C, we've done some work in the neighbouring farms recently, and again, we're finding great silica. And literally at surface, this is 0 to 2 metres deep. So from a strip ratio point of view, it's excellent. From a mining point of view, this is really as basic and simple as mining gets. There's no drill and blast. Grade control is relatively generous, if I can call it that, especially compared to some of the hard rock mining that we're used to in West Australia. And of course, when we're talking West Australian mining to potential overseas customers, and I'm sure VRX and the other silica companies would say the same, is of course they're very comforted by West Australia's mining culture and history of mining. So yes, we have our permitting and approvals process to go through. On a positive note, we've been through that many times before as an industry over the last 100 years. So just another close-up shot, or just to really re-emphasise the difference between iron in on the photos on the left-hand side. That's raw as you grab it off the ground. You can see some of that yellow material there, or yellow-brown there, iron particles, limonite mostly. And on the right-hand side, the cleaned-up silica. And again, you can see, just literally visually see the difference between the high purity that we're aiming for from a saleable product point of view. Simple clean-up process. We really are focused on no chemicals. Dune buggy is, I guess, the second cab off the rank, and basically it's a sand mass that we found not too far, literally, from Esperance Port. Dune buggy has its own little nuances in terms of metallurgy, which we've been doing some work on. And again, we're going through the process there, lining up for further drilling. We did do a survey to confirm essentially the presence of a very large resource potential there. So June Buggy will be the subject of further work, but the real carrot there for us is just purely the absolute closeness and proximity to Esperance Port, plus also, of course, township and infrastructure. And Pink Bark, we only just announced last week that we've completed our first round of drilling at Pink Bark only a week or so ago. And again, we're very encouraged by what we can see. And again, you can see the sort of farmland that we're dealing with. It's wheat crop for part of the year. And literally the sand and sampling techniques are very simple, very basic, very straightforward for Pink Bark. So samples are in the assay lab. Assays are all weighted. Who knows, 6 weeks, 7 weeks. I'm not sure what turnaround is currently with the lab on the chemical suite that we're doing there. And then last but not least, Argyle Sands. We applied for this again about 2.5 years ago. And we're basically just in the last stage of getting heritage clearance sorted out in the next few weeks. I was quite surprised again. I wouldn't have expected to see good quality sand in this part of Australia, especially so close to some fairly arid parts of Australia. But our grab sampling again was very encouraging, 99% white sand, and again from what we could see under the microscope, iron doesn't look as though it'll present too much of a problem. So once we get the heritage survey done, we hope to be out there drilling very soon. Drilling, very cheap, very cost efficient, very fast. I mean, we're talking 2 to 20 metre deep holes. They're sort of all over in a matter of an hour or so, or less. Small rig, light equipment, very low impact, very low cost, less than $25 a metre all in. So that's one of the great things about the silica sand industry is you can actually get to a resource inventory of 70 million tonnes, or I think in the case of VRX, they're talking over 1 billion tonnes in some areas. It doesn't cost you a lot of money to get a very large tonnage potential to then start the process of talking to ports and customers. So very simple for Allup Silica moving forwards. It's a combination of sampling, more drilling, more met testing, and talking to more customers and ports as we move forwards. And it's really a process of bringing all those things together at once over the next 24 months, give or take. So it's all up from here, at least we hope. Program of works, most of the permitting and processing, we've been through that now for 3 years. As I said, we did start off about 4 years ago in terms of the company. Whilst only listed for a year, we are fairly advanced on a lot of this, and we've got a great team of people. I've been very encouraged as a junior startup literally a year ago. We've had approaches unsolicited from potential customers for the last 2 years, which I was very surprised. They sort of literally are coming knocking to us. That tends to give me certainly confidence and optimism that the looming shortage in high purity silica sand moving forwards is indeed happening. Especially the glass manufacturers looking at photovoltaic and that niche market of less than 100 parts per million iron. They're definitely looking and sort of keeping very close tabs on us, and I'm sure all the other silica sand players here in Australia. So I think from a marketing point of view, we're in great shape moving forwards over the next 3 or 4 years to finalise offtake agreements, get through all those steps that we need to, and be starting up a new industry in Australia. So project, purities and ports. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Chrissy.